Hi, I'm Michael Avenatti. Buckle up for November and beyond.
Hi, I'm Dave Kirkpatrick. Welcome to November and Beyond Special Edition. This week we feature Michael Avenatti. Came out and announced his presidential bid. We think it's for real. He announced this last week and gave us a surprise announcement, really, that he was coming to a little Greenfield barbecue where there was a Democratic fundraiser and some other stuff going on. He showed up and became the star of the show, so I made this special. Please enjoy it. He's an interesting guy. He says a lot of good things. He looks like he's ready to roll up his sleeves and fight. I might not do much commentary on this show as a rule, but I enjoyed this. He says stuff I like. It was fun to watch, and at the end of the day, he stuck around and talked to everybody, and we all took selfies, and he did the teaser for my show. What a regular guy. There's a horse in the race. Without further ado, enjoy the show.
I want to welcome you all, including the media. The media is not our enemy.
Hello, everybody. Are we ready to win? Yes! Are we going to beat Chris Sununu? Yes! We're going to re-elect Annie Custer? Yes! We're going to win the majorities of the council in the House and the Senate? Yes! Are we enjoying the first nice day we've had in 6 months? I want to thank you all for coming. Supporting the county Democrats is the most effective way you can utilize your money in helping elect Democrats in 2018. This is all about the grassroots. We need you to volunteer. We need all of you to show up at the Milford headquarters or the headquarters that's nearest to you to volunteer, to go door to door, talk to the voters. We're going to have a very successful year if we reach out to all those Democrats and make sure they turn out. So please give a great Granite State welcome to Donald J. Trump's worst nightmare. Oh, you can do better than that. Donald Trump's worst nightmare, Michael Avenatti.
It is great to be back here in New Hampshire today on this beautiful day, and I want to thank Ray and Roger for hosting this event in this incredible venue. It's unbelievably picturesque, and it is a sincere honor for me to be here back in the state of New Hampshire. Thank you. Today I want to talk to you about the fight that I believe that we are in for the soul of our republic. I want to talk to you about what we are fighting for, and more importantly, how we fight for it. But before I get any further, I want to deal with the elephant in the park, or should I say the donkey in the park. Some of you may be thinking, what is some porn star lawyer doing here today to talk to us about our republic and our party? So let me tell you why I am here today. In normal times, I would not be with you today. I would be back in Los Angeles enjoying my good fortune. But these, as all of you know, are anything but normal times. I grew up to a modest family in Missouri. When I was 12 years of age, I started working a variety of jobs. I mowed lawns in the summer for our neighbors, and in the winter, I shoveled their snow. I worked a variety of part-time jobs. I worked at McDonald's. I worked at Marshall's. My parents taught me at a young age the value of a hard day's work. Let's be clear. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, and no, we never had a gold toilet in our house. And in 1989, I witnessed my father, who had worked for a company for 31 years and moved his family 4 or 5 times, I witnessed him come home and announce that he had lost his job. Why? Because the company had decided that it was cheaper to replace him with someone younger. These are not normal times. I was later first in my family to graduate college, and I have since become a very fortunate man. And again, if these were normal times, I would not be here with you today. I would not have had this honor to appear before you today. But a strange thing happened to me earlier this year. Because of an accident of fate, I was handed a client who'd been wronged by the President of the United States. Headline writers know her only by her occupation, but I have come to know Stormy Daniels as someone that believes in truth, justice, and has an incredible degree of courage and fortitude. And in the course of our fight for justice for Stormy, something remarkable happened. Americans of all walks of life reached out their hands to us and began to provide us with information. And without ever planning to, I suddenly found myself face to face opposite the most powerful man in the world, fighting not only for Stormy, but ultimately other women and countless families who'd had their children stripped from them on our southern border. I also found myself fighting on behalf of every American that believes in facts, evidence, and justice. Yeah. Now, I am not exactly a stranger to politics. When I was in my 20s trying to figure out how I was going to pay for college and ultimately law school, I worked on over 130 Democratic campaigns in over 30 states across this nation. But when I left politics, I never thought that I would be standing here in a place like this today before each of you talking about our republic and our party. But the Trump presidency has galvanized me, as I know it has galvanized so many of you and so many millions of other Americans. I don't know how yet I will step up, but I am reminded about our founding fathers when they founded this nation. You see, our founding fathers did not envision career politicians. Our founding fathers envisioned a system where, when called upon, individuals of our society would step up, rise to the occasion, serve their country, and then return to their lives. Let us be clear. Donald Trump does not have the knowledge, wisdom, compassion, or fortitude to serve as the President of the United States. There was a time when I thought that the office would change the man, but unfortunately we now know that the man is changing the office, and this must end. Right on. What we Democrats are fighting for is nothing short than the survival of our republic. We are fighting for the ideals that made America, America. What we are fighting for is each other, our children, our families, our neighbors, and our cities. We're fighting for the ability of hardworking people to earn a decent living, to pay their healthcare expenses, and to send their kids to college so they have a shot at a real American dream. What we are fighting for is the ability of our children to go to school and not wonder if they'll make it through the day without being shot. What we are fighting for is Roe versus Wade. Equality, women's rights, transgender rights, and gay rights. That is what we are fighting for. And what are we fighting against? We are fighting against a man who wants to usher us back into the dark ages. A man that wants more pollution, more disregard for the downtrodden and those with disabilities, more disregard for women and minorities, and more billions for billionaires. A man who, if reelected, will put our Supreme Court at 7-2 in favor of the strong over the weak, in favor of corporations over people, and in favor of old men with ideas about women's bodies versus women themselves. Now, among us Democrats here today, nothing that I have just said is controversial. We are more united than not on the question of what we are fighting for. But we often seem to be a party that is divided as to how we should fight. I believe that there is no question more important than us here today than this question of how. Because this president, no matter how corrupt or cruel he is, he knows how to fight. He may be the worst president this nation has ever known, but he also beat 17 opponents, many of whom were experienced, many of whom were smart, many of whom were very well qualified, and many of whom told us how bad he would be. How did he accomplish this? Because he knows how to fight. He is a fighter. What I fear most for this Democratic Party that I love so much is that we have a tendency to bring nail clippers to a gunfight. So today, in this beautiful location in New Hampshire, I want to propose a different course. I believe that our party, the Democratic Party, must be a party that fights fire with fire. I believe we cannot be the party of turning the other cheek. I believe that we must be the party of marshaling the law and the government to bring those who hit that cheek to justice. So I say, when they go low, we hit harder. Now, I know that there may be a number of you here today that disagree with me. You may say that the answer to Donald Trump is to be the exact opposite of Donald Trump. Be noble, be kind, be classy. And I am for all of those things. But today, with our nation under an unprecedented attack by a con man who only fights for himself and degrades the vulnerable and those that we must protect the most, I ask you whether those that we fight for can afford our gentleness. There is no question that we are the party of love in America. Of loving thy neighbor, of loving whomever you want to love, of policies that extend a loving hand to those that find themselves without a job or in a place of weakness. We are the party of love. But what I believe is when you are the party of love and when you are fighting on behalf of those that depend on us, you cannot afford to fight lovingly. If you want peace, prepare for war, the old Latin saying goes. And in that spirit, I say, if we want a more inclusive, tolerant, compassionate, welcoming, gracious, and kind America, we must be willing to do battle to achieve it. If we want the American dream for ourselves, our families, our children, each other, and our cities, we must leave it on the field every day, and we must be willing to fight for it. Here is what I believe the Democratic Party is. In the eternal battle of David versus Goliath, we are the party of Davids. We are the party of people who want to live their lives, chase their dreams, do their jobs, raise their children, leave the world a little better than they found it, and who so often find themselves up against Goliaths. They find themselves up against employers who don't treat them right. They find themselves up against an economy rigged to take the profits and the froth at the top and give it to a chosen few. They find themselves up against an outrageous immigration policy that seeks to strip children from families and destroy families in the interest of bigotry. They find themselves up against racism and sexism. We are the party of Davids. Davids come in black and Davids come in white. Davids are Asian and Latino and Arab. Davids speak Spanish and Davids speak English. Davids are Christian and Davids are Muslim. Davids are men and Davids are women, and Davids are gay and Davids are straight. Davids are people who never would ask for a handout, but who require a helping hand from time to time when they find themselves in trouble. Davids are people that struggle to get enough hours at work so they can figure out a way to pay their bills. Davids are families that struggle to find a place for their kids to go to daycare and try to figure out how they're going to pay for it. Davids are people who want to provide their children with a better life, but in Trump's America, don't know how. Yes, we are the party of Davids. And when you are the party of Davids, you cannot afford to show up without a slingshot. You know, we trial lawyers get a bad name, and many of us, frankly, deserve it. But I can stand here today and tell you that I am not just some TV lawyer. I have fought on behalf of Davids for nearly 20 years in my career. For those years, I've represented people who have found themselves on the wrong side of power. I've battled con men and fraudsters and corporations that hurt people simply because they thought they could get away with it. I have fought on behalf of Jewish families who learned that the remains of their loved ones had been scattered in a mass grave because the publicly traded cemetery company wanted to make more money. Many of my clients survived the Holocaust only to end up in a mass grave on U.S. soil. I have fought on behalf of first responders and doctors and nurses who risked their life treating those with Ebola and HIV and other deadly diseases, and relied on surgical equipment that they understood to be safe because the company that made that equipment didn't tell them a secret. And the secret was they had moved the manufacturing to Honduras in order to save money, and that the surgical equipment was defective. Thus, doctors and nurses and first responders were risking their lives day in and day out. And most recently, I have fought on behalf of dozens of families who appeared on our southern border in search of a better life for them and their kids, only to run up against the ultimate Goliath, Donald Trump, who wanted to send a message to the world: don't come to America, because if you do, we will take your children from you, you may never see them again, and we will destroy your family. This is not our America. Here is what I've learned over the last 20 years battling Goliaths. Goliaths do not readily see the errors of their ways. They don't just roll over one day and admit they're wrong. They don't just roll over and do the right thing. No, when you're battling Goliaths, you have to fight every day and you have to bring them to justice. There is no other way when you are battling Goliaths like Donald Trump. But let me also say this. In the age of the dumpster fire that is the Trump presidency, and make no mistake about it, it is one large dumpster fire. We cannot afford as a party simply to fight against. We must also fight for Davids. We Democrats must fight to put Americans back to work in good paying, solid jobs through an infrastructure plan, a real infrastructure plan that rebuilds our roads, our airports, our public transportation. We must fight to make college affordable for every American. No one in the greatest country on earth should hesitate to send their child to college because they can't afford it. We must fight for Medicare for all. Our men and women in the military do not leave a fallen soldier behind on the battlefield, and when one of our own experiences healthcare problems, we should not leave them behind either. We must fight to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. It has been too long. We must fight for sensible gun control in America. We should never have another school shooting on U.S. soil. We must finally invest in our public school teachers who've sacrificed so much day in and day out for the future of our children. And we must fight to secure our border while at the same time honoring the values and principles that founded this country and paying homage to people like my great-grandfather who came to America in search of a better life. Now, if we are to be successful in connection with these fights, we must do something that many of you may oppose. We must figure out a way to welcome some of the voters that voted for Donald Trump home. Do I believe they were wrong in 2016? Absolutely. Do I believe that their choice hurt millions of Americans and put our children at risk? Absolutely. Do I believe their choice resulted in significant disrespect abroad for this country? Absolutely. But we must believe, we must figure out a way to bring them home if we are to be successful in each of our fights. I am concerned that if we shame them, if we make them wrong, we may lose them forever. So today, let me propose a different way of thinking about some of these voters. Let me suggest that for our own sake above all, because we need and we must win, that we think of them not as evildoers, but as victims of a great con. Look, we have all been taken advantage of before. If there's one thing I've learned in nearly 20 years as an advocate, is that smart people get conned all the time. And let's admit it, Donald Trump is a great con man. He sold many of us a bill of goods. He appeared as the snake oil salesman, and he promised millions of Americans everything that would cure their ails. We must welcome some of these voters back home. Let me also say this. You see, Trump is hoping that millions of Americans fail to see the connection between their struggles and the struggles of others. This cruel and unusual president would not be in power had he not convinced 2/3 of people that look like me that their success depended on the trampling of women, minorities, African Americans, Muslims, immigrants, the disabled, and so many others. And of course, he does this because he hopes that if we are whipped into hatred, we will forget all of the broken promises, all of the jobs that he promised that haven't materialized, that we will forget all of the embarrassment that he has brought us here domestically and abroad. You see, too many of us have forgotten that old phrase, "There walks I, but for the grace of God." Too many of us have a hard time putting ourselves in the shoes of those Trump is hurting. Too many of us fail to ask, if it were me, how would I want to be treated? Too many of us have been eerily silent, standing on the sidelines and allowing injustice to be done because they are not us. The vulnerable populations whom Trump is targeting are presently fighting for their very survival, but it cannot be their fight alone. It is imperative for each of us to stand and say, enough. These are my people too. If we Americans can stand and say this, and say it loudly, if all who have forgotten that phrase, "There but for the grace of God go I," can remember that truth, if we can muster the will to fight, we can defeat President Trump's unusual cruelty. We can and will make the American dream real again. We will make America gracious again. We will make America fair again. We will make America dynamic again. We will make America respected again. And above all else, we will make America, America again. Thank you.
So there you go. Thanks for watching this special edition of November and Beyond. As you can see, sometimes we go all out for you, and sometimes, well, we're always going to get you something that's interesting to watch. You may have heard bits and pieces from Michael Avenatti on the news, which is feverishly covering somebody's tweets most of the time. So there you go. There's the full bucket. There's the speech. You heard it. Share it. Enjoy it. Curse it. Do what you want with it. Finally, this special edition of this show, we have a full 90-minute version of November and Beyond. It airs Thursdays at 7:30, features local politics, events, speakers, all things that are focused on us moving together to make a brighter future for all. I hope you'll join me Thursdays at 7:30 for November and Beyond.